Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Transpicuous Views. It is April 16th, the day that bunny rabbits shit chocolate eggs and no one asks a fucking question about it. Tonight, we're going to dig deep. We're going to go into a conversation of no boundaries, talking about the construct. The construct. And with me tonight, I have the awesome Randy Maugans from Off Planet Radio. Hi, Randy. Here we are. So we're going to talk about the construct. And Randy and I have been kind of rambling on for the last half hour as everyone's been coming into the Zoom chat and talking about what we're going to talk about today. So the construct. It seems to be probably one of the biggest themes of a lot of alternative journalists, shall we say, for the last year and a half. The construct, the simulation. Do we live in a construct? And what does that mean? Because English is so fucked up. You can say a word and everyone can have a different interpretation of what it means. So the two basic premises that I come across most often is the fact of the construct, that it is a physical construct, literally, or a matrix computer-generated virtual reality simulation. Kristen and Renee, can you turn off your cameras, please? Unfortunately, we seem to be we're not on the usual Zoom account, so all the glitches are coming out all over the place. And what does it mean? And the whys, and the various aspects, whether we're talking about a technological thing happening. Put that category, D-Wave, CERN, DARPA boys, ancient technologies, pick one. Or, your galactic, holistic, organic energies coming from the galactic center, etc., and everything in between. And that's what we want to look at tonight. And our benchmark that we're going to use as our, shall we say, our symptom, if you will, is going to be the Mandela Effect. How does the Mandela Effect play into all these scenarios? So we'll call that like our benchmark, our symptom of something really, really fucking strange going on in this neighborhood. So, Randy, what do you think? Where's your ballpark?
Well, we've kind of batted all of these ideas around in some form or another in alternative media now for how long's the Mandela Effect been going on?
Hardcore since spring of 2015.
Yeah. And before that, we didn't really have anything to call it except synchronicity, which is kind of sort of what it is. But then you've got a different conversation because this has really been going on forever, but we just didn't notice it before, which goes into the whole consciousness thing of how many anomalous events have occurred inside and outside of timelines that people weren't noticing because they didn't know to look for them because they believed that they were actually in a linear timeline.
It's funny. We have conversations in the Unfucker group all the time that are people talk about like the personal Mandela effects that pop up and happen in their lives. They're like, oh my God, went driving down the side street and there's a new house on my road. wasn't there yesterday. It's there today. Holy shit. Now, before, like you said, in the awakened community, now that you've got your mind open to it and you sit there and you realize that time is not linear, time is not time, and that all these things are actually not impossible, all of a sudden you open yourself to it and you actually start recognizing it. Because when you look back in your life, I can look back at multiple events that have happened 10 years, 20 years, 30, 40 years ago and gone, oh, you know what? I think that was probably a Mandela effect, like to use the coin term. And neither Randy or I like the term Mandela effect. We absolutely detest it, actually.
I hate it. I'd like to call it what Og Tellez called it, which was the Mandela effect, because if you just think about a mandala for a minute, it's more accurate. And quite honestly, there's not a lot about Nelson Mandela that wasn't fraud anyway. I mean, he was a manipulated asset of the state. And most of the stories, including what really happened when he died, was they just held his funeral off because they had other events and they wanted to do the Nelson Mandela funeral at an opportune moment, probably strategically, solarly correct as well, so that we were able to do the right spells and the right conjunctions. So
I also think Antarctica played into it because it put all those nice heads of state really nice and close. The closest place to Antarctica you could pretty much get and have them all gathered there. But I digress.
Yeah, so the Mandela effect, we call it that now just because that's the term that gets used out there. And now we've given that a lot of power. I think sometimes with terminology, we have to find another way to reframe it and give it a more vibrant definition. And maybe we can work through that and start something that kind of springboards off of that.
Yeah. I mean, like my personal one is I call it the Toto effect. Like I said, Toto, as in we ain't in Kansas anymore, Toto.
Yeah.
Right? So that's my own, and the what the fuck effect. That's the personal one that gets used most often in the unfuckers room is just the what the fuck effect. Because sometimes that's all it is you just have to sit back and go, what the fuck?
Well, from my standpoint, Danny, it's kind of like I'm so used to the paranormal effects of things. That's a part of me that the kind of, it's what's kind of defined why I'm doing what I'm doing now, but it goes way, 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 way back to when I was a kid. And it's just that the programming never kicked in completely, where I locked into, okay, let's use the Matrix. The Matrix. That's great because, since 1998, we've had that term to lock into. It's served us well.
It has, because it has given us a kind of something that everyone knows, and you can hold it up as an example and say, when you're having a call with someone to say, no, it's like the Matrix. And that person gets it.
Yeah, and unfortunately, so let me go back a minute. From my standpoint, I've been noticing this shit since I was 3 years old. So in some ways, I'm not conditioned into believing that anything is as it appears to be, which is really, it's a prescription for a lifetime of absolute neurosis and maladaption and social ostracism all in one. And wow, what a great ride.
You were just the black sheep, weren't you?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, it's funny because it's an interesting perspective because I came from a very, very programmed upbringing. I was raised as a Jehovah's Witness. And my family were very, very high up. Like my grandfather and my father were very high up within the I'm not going to even call it a church. It's a fucking cult. Let's call it what it is. So I had a very, very programmed. But even as a child, there was just stuff that it just bounced off me. And you went like, no, that doesn't make sense. Well, that doesn't make sense. And when people told you what you should want to do, you want to be a full-time preacher. And I'd be like, no, I don't. No, actually, I don't want to do that at all. I don't know what you're talking about. But coming from that kind of a programmed, really highly programmed upbringing, my waking experience was very, very slow. And it kind of took place over the course of, well, from the time I was about 12 years old, right through till I was really in about 2010 was when I had the huge moment where all of a sudden all these little pieces really fit into a coherent understanding of shit. But it gives a unique perspective when you come from, you being the unprogrammed, so to speak. It gives us a broad perspective base when we talk about this kind of shit of what's normal. What do you accept as normal?
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't think for a minute by what I said there that I had this all put together, because I didn't. And I went through all of the syndromes that you have to go through, including a fair amount of therapy that was almost nearly worthless, except that it taught me to trust myself, which was the real key to all this.
Yep.
The perception of the world around us is uniquely our own. And this is probably the biggest thing I take away from the whole awakening experience is the minute you start to wake up, something is going to grab you and pull you into a vortex of concepts and try to keep you there.
Yep.
And that's going to be important as we unfold this discussion today, because the greatest danger that the so-called awake and aware people have, and I don't want to take anything away from them, is that you get up one morning and you think you got that shit nailed, because you don't. The rabbit, it isn't a rabbit hole. It's a freaking endless maze that never stops. And once you go down it, you're not coming back up the same as you were before. Yeah.
Well, belief. I went on a real tirade probably about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago about that. Because we say the word belief and people automatically we talk, again, meanings of words, definitions. Mm-hmm. People think religion. So when you say you need to get rid of your belief structures, people automatically go, oh no, I don't have anything to do with that religious stuff anymore. No, I've put that all behind me. But that's not what belief means. That's just a terminology that we've associated with the word. Basically, it's that you don't know, you believe. There's no proof. And all of a sudden you take it and it becomes very concrete. And I had a real moment back in February when all of a sudden I realized that I was interpreting and researching, but I was bringing it all back to a single base. And the base concept was that this is a computer-generated simulation, that we are in a matrix. And then all of a sudden I sat there and was like, wait a second, you don't know that. You don't know that. You surmise it. You kind of feel that that's probably the most likely scenario. But when you start building theories out from one specific structure, all of a sudden you have a belief structure. And it becomes concrete. And you all of a sudden have to look at these things and go, oh, wait a second, snap. Like I just made a conclusion and pontificated it like I know what the answer is. Yet the reality of it is I don't know jack shit. I don't know jack shit more than anyone else does. We can only come back to working things through, going through the fucking maze and being open to everything, really looking at it objectively.
And that's a scary place for anyone to be, especially people who have begun an awakening process. I mean, everybody's process is different. It's based on something that grabbed them in the moment and said, this is not what you think it is. And it could be anything. It could be 9/11. It could be the JFK assassination. It could be the day you realize that something in your life really wasn't very good, and yet you believed for a long time that you had a great life. Everybody's different. The energetics are different.
Yeah.
One of the biggest takeaways that we get, and we can learn things by studying. I'm not against research and facts and accumulating a knowledge base, but again, don't marry it. But one of the consistent things I see, and I've been researching the subject of consciousness, probably 25 years or longer. I mean, for me, it was the one thing that I could grab onto and say, okay, I have an awareness. That awareness is aware of itself. What do we know about that? And what we learned from the body of knowledge, and I'll go back to the work that Robert Monroe did, the gentleman who started the Monroe Institute, which he actually goes back to the 50s and then forward into the 70s when he started being pulled out of body and doing these night travels. Monroe, Ingo Swann, the research that went into military use of remote viewing, and even quantum physics itself has told us that consciousness itself is not localized. You can't localize it in your brain. And surgeons, doctors, theologians, all at some point come to the conclusion, even if it's simply by studying a person who's been in a coma or an altered state, that consciousness is not local. So if it's not local, then where is it, and what is the it that it perceives as it's going through its journey? Now it gets trippy and it gets scary.
The observer. And that actually, and that's another whole fucking topic that I actually had a huge conversation on the weekend with my husband about the observer. I mean, that opens again when you talk about, again, quantum physics. You throw a whole new doorway open of thought processes just by bringing in that concept of the observer. Who is the observer? And what are they observing? Like, you talk about the macro and the micro, right? So, yeah, I mean, this is the thing. So I want to talk about this. We aren't in Kansas anymore. The reality that we were taught as children, the reality that our parents told us existed, our teachers, our pastors, our politicians, our peers, it doesn't exist. It was a fairy tale, what we were told. And we are now in a fluid reality, really. And John Carl coined that term this weekend in a conversation, and it is, to me, a perfect word, a fluid reality. What does that mean? How? The whys, right? So we look at things like the Mandela Effect, the Toto Effect, the what the fuck effect. When shit suddenly changes, and I'm not talking now about logos or who said what in a fucking movie. I don't care about that one. Like that's all interesting, and it gives you a giggle sometimes. I'm talking about the stuff in people's personal lives, where they come home from work one day and their bedroom walls are suddenly blue instead of yellow. Mm-hmm. Where the key hook is no longer on the wall in the kitchen, and now it's in the front hallway. Their car has gone from white to silver. And this is the kind of stories I get all the time.
And the dimensions of your room have suddenly changed since the last time you measured for the carpeting.
Yeah, exactly. These are where you can no longer sit back and say, oh, you just don't remember. These are physical proofs that people are coming, and they're coming bigger, faster right now. We had in the Unfuckers room, I don't know, 7 or 8 personal Mandela effects of that kind of level in the last week alone. So people are now coming face to face with reality really is not what we fucking thought it was. Like, not on any level. So I want to look at the whys. Let's discuss the theories and how that is defined, or how the Mandela effect is defined by those theories, or what we perceive as the Mandela effect. Is it a matrix? Is it a computer? Are we literally somewhere in some other place, jacked in somewhere, and our consciousness is in a computer simulation, a hologram, however you want to talk about it, and what we're seeing as the Mandela effect is purely nothing more than a glitch, just glitches that are happening as the computer program's breaking down. It's Windows 10 and it fucking sucks and it's just falling apart, and therefore it's like dissolving.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the firmware upgrade on the phone, and when you pull it back up, you suddenly discover that some of your features aren't grandfathered in anymore, or that it's an inside joke. But so, yeah, I mean, the awakening process has been going on effectively for over 50 years now. And like most things that have to do with change, we think of change as something that erupts suddenly. Something blows up. It's the nature of humanity that we want dynamicism in our unveilings. So we blow shit up. That's what we do. But the fact of the matter is that the progression of waves has been going on for a long time. There's been high watermarks. You could say 1967. You could say that's Summer of Love. You could say 1998, the convergence, the 2012 event, which obviously got a lot of play on the internet, and nobody agreed on what it was. Some people were pissed because they didn't evolve into 5D, and others were thoroughly hacked off because they weren't dead. I mean, I was like, okay, I don't think you can satisfy both of those equations, but hey, go for it. It's your world. It's your consciousness.
Have fun with it.
That's the point. We're observationally localizing our focus at any given time on the reality. And the awakening experience is designed to be a jarring experience to the point where you pull back from that for a minute and you go, wait a minute. There's more up here. I've only been observing what's in front of my eyes. Now I get to use my peripheral vision, and I may actually have to use the rotator in my neck to look around and see, oh my, what's that over there? So we're just we're riffing through a reality where we had no idea how many angles there were to the looking glass. The looking glass isn't a flat mirror. It's a fucking prism.
It's one of those 5-way mirrors that on 360 degrees, and it just goes on forever.
Yeah, and you'll smash your face if you walk into the wrong pane of it, but go for it. A little blood's good.
And unfortunately,
somebody in the chat got that. Prism. Yes.
Yes, prism.
Prism.
Prism. Although the prism could be a prison.
It could be.
Given the way sometimes it feels.
So back to your, okay, so we took the Matrix, and the Matrix, like I said, the Matrix served us well because of what? Because since the late 80s, mid 90s, we've had these devices in front of us long enough now that they've become superimposed onto our reality in a way that they're an identifiable metaphor. In previous ages, it would have been the scrying, the amulet, the auger. All of those things were means to communicate with a reality that seemed to be outside our own perception. So we adopt metaphors because metaphors help us to relate concepts long enough to load them into memory and process them, which is really what we're doing. Mm-hmm. So the Mandela Effect, in a lot of ways, it's different for every person.
Yeah.
The most meaningful isn't whether the Bible suddenly changed overnight and your grandmother's dusty 1897 version of the King James Bible had words altered. It's when you look at your own reality and realize that that's been altered. Now you've got some meaning. Now you can peg to something that says this is a floating differential reality stream, and we are simply going through it, and there are variables like the numbers in the matrix, the stream. And the variables in the isn't that?
My eldest daughter's going to bed. She wanted to stay up for the show, but she's like, I can't. I gotta go.
That's okay.
She usually stays up, but not tonight.
You can get the tape later.
That's right. She watched the video.
Yeah. So where was I? Oh, the stream. So the what's interesting about the Matrix to me was always those numbers floating down. Mm-hmm. The computer field of binary numbers. I noticed they did that with Westworld too in the opening credits. If anybody's seen Westworld, they did the same thing with the piano roll. So now we've got, and I look for things like this because they're visual patterns, and I think visually. In fact, it's hard for me sometimes because I'm somewhat synesthetic to verbalize concepts. So, and that's part of it too. That's giving you a visual that you can anchor into to let you know that this is a floating system of variables plugged into what we call a matrix. And a matrix can be anything. It could be the motherboard on a computer. Yep. I could pull an IC off of that, plug in another IC, and upgrade the board. Yep. So that gives us a working metaphor. Don't marry into the idea that the computer is what defines the matrix, though. The matrix also means the mother. So now we go into Gaia and the Mother Earth theories.
Yeah.
And we can pretty much transpose all of those ideas from one metaphor to another. They'll float. They're great.
Right.
You can take whatever metaphor works for you and work with the concepts in that array, because that's what it is. It's an array.
Yeah.
But if you marry the metaphor, then you're stuck in the matrix with Keanu Reeves, and you're endlessly having to deal with Agent Smith murdering your ass and flying off with Trinity into the flying off with Trinity to Antarctica. So
yeah.
There you
go. Okay, so it's interesting you bring up the whole Mother Sophia, the Gaia aspect.
Yeah.
And that's another one that falls into that, what I could call a belief category. For a lot of people, that has become a very concrete, it might as well be solid titanium. They cannot move, or I shouldn't say move, they cannot contemplate other options, other theories, other thoughts, because it all comes back to that base.
Yeah. We'll see the whole Gaiam concept, or Gaia. Sorry, Gaiam's a TV network. I don't want to be sued for using that name. Sorry, delete that. Because they don't like me already anyway. So the whole Gaia thing kind of marries us back into the organic. It brings us into a place where we can go out and we can take our shoes off and we can earth and we can ground and we can go in the waters and we can refresh ourselves. I don't take anything away from that. I love the time that I spend in nature. Having said that, how we differentiate what is artificial from natural gets a bit intricate, because now if I say, okay, so I've earthed and I've done the deep breathing and I've communed with nature and I'm one with everything, and then I come back in and I flip my computer open. I'm now using a computer which all the elements of it came from the earth itself. The only thing that was added to it was the intelligence and ingenuity and industry that we put into creating an object. But what's inside the object is another form of intelligence, much like the intelligence of the planet itself, which I do believe is a living being of another type, and which has its own intelligence, its own emotional responses, however you view that. So the malevolent thing comes into the box because it's a box, and now the computer is the demon and the earth is the salvation. And anybody that's seen the fury of this planet when it floods, when it earthquakes, when it does all of these violent things that it does, knows
volcanoes and mudslides.
I mean, I got a 45-mile-an-hour headwind blowing right against my door out here right now, and it's, other than that, it's a beautiful day. And you're kind of going, well, gosh, shouldn't it rain or something? But it's like, no. So, to slice and dice that and say that the silicone intelligence of the computer is malevolent, and Mother Earth is pure, and I must immerse in Gaia, and that is my deity. All you've done is you've transposed everything into what I call the savior programs.
Yeah.
Because if the earth is an intelligence, if it is benevolent, if it is a nurturing mother, then it's smart enough to know that it needs to let its children go, that they're not in need of a savior. They're in the need of going out into the world and getting bitch slapped and understanding reality and waking up. And that's the difference. I don't venerate Earth to the point where it becomes a religious tenet to me. Oh God, here's a word, coexist with it, cooperate with it.
I love gardening. And some of the most peaceful times I have is to go out to the garden and just putter. I love walking on the beach and digging my toes in the sand, the wet sand, and just, I love it. I enjoy it. And I always have done. But there comes a point when it becomes idol worship. And I know that sounds harsh, but that's what I find. There's a lot of carryover from the pagan / new age memes that you kind of step out of a religion. But then you got to create a new religion. And this new religion is Mother Earth, whether it's the goddess, whether it's the mother, whether it's the, and then it becomes a belief structure again. And therein you get trapped. It becomes a cage because you can't move beyond that one belief. And then you build all your theories and other beliefs upon one belief. Yeah.
Well, it becomes, so when we came in, however you view this, and I'm not going into reincarnation here. When you're born, when you come in, when you drop into a body, when you're birthed, you not only naked literally, but you're naked neurally. Now, I don't believe in tabula rasa in terms of every infant comes in and they're a blank slate, because I know that's not true. I have too many children that I've raised at this point. They came in with personalities. They came in with an intelligence that's, just almost unfathomable how brilliant they really are. And then they get entrained into the system because we have to teach them how to live. I mean, obviously, they can't poop in their pants forever, so we need to teach them that. But we teach them language. That's the first, that's a benchmark. We teach them to speak and spell so that they have concepts that we can trade back and forth between each other. And then you are educated, inducted into how to think, how to speak, how to spell, how to do counting,
how to take orders, how to follow the rules, how to
socialization
think outside the box. How to become programmed.
In nature, animals teach their young how to survive. I mean, a colt is born with the ability to stand up on its 2 feet and run. So physically it's prepared to do that thing which it was designed to do biologically, to get up on its feet and run. Humans have a very long incubation period. We pop out of the womb, but we're really still eggs. We just have a human morphological aspect. And then there's the whole training process, which is designed to put us in the container, which is physicality. And also to begin to effectively switch off over time aspects of our reality that are, quote, undesirable. I talk to myself. I have always talked to myself. When I was a kid, my mom told me that that was a sign that you were crazy if you talk to yourself. And then somebody else will go, nah, it's only if you answer yourself. I have entire dialogues with myself. Now, socialization taught me to do that in my head, but I still talk to myself. See, in doing that, you're switching off something. You're switching off the connection between the internal processing and the verbalization. There are some words which you are not to speak, and there are some things which you're not supposed to notice. The other one is the entrainment of the visual range, which is to be and I've talked about this on my shows before, so somebody who's heard this before, I won't bore you with too much of the concept, but it's basically training the frontal visual field so that you are looking forward. We do this when we look into somebody's face, our mother. I mean, what are the first things we see? We see our mother's eyes and the breast. And most men never get over that again. But our eyes are trained visually to look forward. We watch television. We look forward. We read a book. We look forward.
We look at this
All
computer.
of the skills and tasks that we have to do are based on frontally focused vision, to the point where most of us are nominally, if at all, aware of what goes on in this field out here. Yet, the lining of the eyes going back into the eye socket itself are coated with cells, visual cells, where we have another entire range of vision completely. And this was a technique that I understood a long time ago, of being able to defocus frontal vision and to work purely from the peripheral for some period of time. In other words, to deselect, much like if you had a multicam setup, you would turn off the front cams, you would go to the rear cams. Now you're becoming aware. The difference is that the visual spectrum back here is connected up here to nerves that run up into the pineal gland. So now we're not only perceiving visual data, but we're also perceiving vibrational and light data as well.
Well, that's really interesting, because you're talking about the peripheral. The one thing that everyone's been talking about in the group, on and off for all ages, but especially in the last 3 months, is the peripheral. What they're seeing in the peripheral, all of a sudden seeing lights, seeing shadows, seeing matrix type coding, seeing all kinds of things. But again, I often wonder, is it a matter of group awareness? One person talks about it, it makes you aware of the peripheral. So then you think about it, and then you know, because you think about it and it's come into your awareness, you start taking note of the things, and it may seem new, but maybe it's not new. Maybe it's just that we're finally taking note of what it is that we are seeing out here instead of training directly forward.
Yeah, we are. And it's important, because you were trained for so long in the way you've seen things. There's kind of an extreme thing that you do when you're training people. You push them very hard. People who have been through military training know that you're physically broken down and then built back up again. As
physically, mentally, and
emotionally. You know, there's a fair amount of mind control, which, sidebar here, mind control is not a bad thing if you're in charge of it. End of sidebar. Now, we need to do the same thing ourselves. And part of what all of this awakening is doing is it throws these disruptive aspects at us, that we begin to notice them. And in noticing them, we're now allowing for a possibility to exist that didn't exist before. We've now added another level to our awareness, our consciousness, and people don't know what to do with that. They want answers. I've been doing this all these years. You know, the more data you put out, the more questions you get from people who want to know, well, what do I do with this? Well, what feels good to you?
Yeah.
Would you like to be able to see what's going on around you? I mean, literally eyes in the back of your head, because I'm telling you right now, you can do this. I'm telling that you can perceive what is behind you at any given time if you begin to operate in this, because it is not only a visual exercise, it is now an extension into your neural net of building your psychic abilities as well.
Yeah.
You see, the physical is limited, the psychic aspect of this.
Yep. Well, I mean, using the analogy, I used to be a deaf translator. I used to be a sign language translator. Mm-hmm. People who are deaf, their other senses are far more expanded. I had two really, really good friends of mine when I was a teenager who were blind. One was born blind. The other one was blinded in an accident. Both had surreal abilities to sense everything around them. Why? Because this was turned off. it didn't become the program, like you say, of this looking forward. They naturally evolved the ability to use the other senses, not just hearing, but it goes beyond that in a lot of ways. Whether you want to call it psychic, whether you want to call it an energetic thing, just becoming aware of the frequencies and the energies around you.
Yeah, yeah. And what they will do in training military grade, intelligence grade psychics is they will use a process of throwing you into situations where you're completely shut off and shut down. And at that point, that begins an activation, much like they'll split personalities. They will also enable the incubation of extended senses by reason of deprivation.
Yeah.
That's the extreme end of it. The high end of it is that every night we do this, we go to sleep and we go through a progression of mind states, starting at alpha, going down into deep delta. And we get up in the morning and we went, I had this really interesting dream last night and I barely remember it. I know what it feels like. And then we go, but that was just a dream. And then we're back into the workaday world again, where in fact, reverse the equation for a minute. What if that's real? And what if all this is the dream?
Oh God, I have been down this rabbit holes in so many fucking conversations, because this is the whole thing. I mean, I've done a lot of dream work and I've done a lot of remote viewing-esque. That's the new modern term for it. That's not what I called it when I was doing it, but okay, we'll go with the word remote viewing.
That's another metaphor.
It's another metaphor. Mandela Effect, remote viewing. Pick one, right? The Matrix. There are things that you experience in there that are just as real, to the point you come out and you can smell it. You can, to the humidity level, to the smells, to the sensations, it is every bit as real as what we perceive here, which is why when we talk about things like, that whole matrix, computer matrix idea, the idea that we are dreaming. This is, our consciousness is in a, whether you want to call it a game, whether you want to call it an experiment, whether you want to call it I don't know, pick one, but is in effect dreaming. And this is the dream. Just to fuck people up a little more.
Well, you mentioned the Wizard of Oz referentially earlier. I mean, look what happens at the end of the Oz thing, where you get to the point where Dorothy wakes up and there's Annie M and there's the oh my gosh, all the characters are right there.
And you were there, and you were there.
Yeah, yeah, because they all were. Because then the whole Oz experience just becomes this fantasy, this thing that came from having pizza the night before. I don't know. We write all that off. From my standpoint, I've kept dream journals. I've done like dream therapy and, lucid dreaming and all of that stuff. This is really elusive stuff because the goal really is to bring something back from that realm. And that was the original meaning behind follow your dreams. All these metaphors and analogies have light side and dark side aspects to them. So when we talk about Oz, we have to remember Oz programming is part of intelligence agency programming as well.
Yep. The man behind the curtain.
That does not mean that we have to abandon all these metaphors and get, well, all that's dark. That's just like religion. It's like, whoa, that's the Satan. That's the devil. And then you abandon a whole block of concepts that are useful. That's why I've told people, drop the love and light bullshit. I just did this on Facebook this morning. Embrace your inner darkness, because that's where you're going to learn.
Okay, so you just, I can see that this conversation tonight is just going to be all over the fucking shop, as they usually are.
Right, yeah.
So I went through this back in 2012, 2013, especially in 2013 in Morocco. The divine feminine, And everyone was all like, oh, we must embrace the divine feminine. Yep. And I kept saying to people, do you understand that that's just the other side of the pendulum? Basically, you're saying, oh, we've been here with the masculine, but now we need to go all the way over here to the feminine. And I'm like, no, it's about the balance point. Going from one end of the pendulum to the other is just going from one end of the pendulum to the other, and neither one is perfect. And until people recognize the fact that there is, I'm sorry, but yeah, it's that whole love and light thing. There is light and dark. And that is one of the things that I've kind of really come to look at. And when we look at things like the savior memes, whether it is religion, whether it is the galactics are coming, channeled messages like that, whole new age stuff, there is this very much this whole focus on this one side, this over here. You gotta, even to that new age meme, which I just, it's like, don't pay attention. If you're paying energy into all the negativity, don't pay any energy into the negativity. You can't, just don't even respond. Like, it doesn't exist in your reality. Just look at, you got to pay all your energy into the light type thing. Except that is not, that's not balance either. It's extremism. I'm sorry, that's what it, to me, the way I see it now is like, is it is extremism. You can choose how you're going to interact, right? I mean, so like I do Transpicuous News, where I talk about all the fucking bullshit that's going on in politics in Syria and fucking North Korea and God fucking, and people can choose whether they want to know about this stuff or not. For me, I want to know because I want to know. It doesn't mean that I'm paying energy into, oh, World War III is coming. Oh my God. But it's there. It's there. And I'm going to look at it and go, okay, well, I see that. And now I'm going to move on from it and work on, the next piece that steps forward. It's about balance. Everything has to be about balance. Even light and dark is duality. When it comes right down to it and separation, if you're talking about unity, well, that is the balance point, isn't it?
Hopefully. The sacred feminine thing for me, gosh, when did I start seeing this? 6, 7 years ago. I started to notice that was surfacing, the sacred feminine, which is a new age readaptation of basically the feminist agenda that emerged out of the 60s, because it wasn't really about equality. It was about pushing ahead one group as being oppressed, therefore the need now for them to become the overlords of the whole thing, rather than going, wait a minute, we have imbalance, we need to realign things a little bit and have the sacred feminine and the sacred masculine, because it's all sacred.
Yep.
But we didn't do that. And coincidentally with this, oh God, this goes into where to even go. Well, gender politics, because of how polarizing that really is. And we're at this interesting place, and we've talked about this on our show. Emily and I have talked about, we've talked about a lot in the background. The gender polarization is so bad now that a generation of kids have come up and said, I don't have a gender. Just call me they, or call me Z, or call me, but I don't want to be identified as a gender because I don't know what I am anymore.
Yeah.
And I saw men who, quite frankly, and I'm not being extreme in saying this, I saw men who I thought were just 2 seconds away from castrating themselves over the sacred feminine.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait a minute. You're of no good to a female if you abandon that role, and vice versa.
It's extremism.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, we're inherently both anyway. I mean, at some point, the extra chromosome drops in, the egg splits, however you want to look at that.
We all have the same hormones.
The secret societies, the ideal is the androgen. the two merge to one.
Yeah.
The ideal here, expression in 3D space-time, is that there's a balance between that. However you identify sexually, in terms of your physicality, you possess the aspects of both. One is stronger than the other based on a predisposition, which is either genetic, psychological, biological, all of it, you know, however that works out.
Yep. No, I mean, this is, see, next time I have you on, I'm not going to try and title it as anything. We're just going to call it Danny and Randy Ramble.
No, but we'll tie the loop on this. Yeah, I mean, we're just a little shy of halfway through this, because you and I both kind of operate the same way. We're intuitives, and you know, we came here today with a nest of ideas, and we're kind of picking through them right now.
Yeah,
exactly. But it does all connect. You know, when I was
exactly symptomatic. This is something that's been really, it's kind of like a word that's really popped for me recently, is they are all symptoms. All of these individual things we've talked about are all symptoms that are an effect that is taking place due to something else. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. They're not, how we say, they're not the illness itself. They are merely the symptoms of the illness, to use a medical kind of jargon. We can't treat the symptoms. You actually have to find out or figure out what the illness is, if indeed it is an illness. Because treating the symptoms doesn't do anything. Right? It fixes the thing here. You've got that here. Take this Tylenol. But it doesn't treat it. All it does is make the pain get numbed down a little bit. And therefore, it comes back. So, yeah, they're all of these things we've talked about are all symptoms. Now, I want to go back to it because you kind of touched on that whole thing, the MK Ultra, the mind control. And I want to talk about the technology aspect. So I want to talk about the you know, we've all seen multiple videos come out in reports, talk about CERN, talking about the D-Wave quantum computers, talking about, like I said, DARPA's bajillion inventions that they've openly talked about that are mind control, that can read your thoughts, that can control your emotions, that can, whether it's HARP waves, fucking name it, right? I mean, there's a whole gamut of technologically based issues that would, maybe, kind of, could play a part in this. And I want to look at that for a second because it is an area that a lot of people don't want to look at. They don't want to look at the fact that perhaps some of what we're seeing play out could be being caused by technology, i.e. the Mandela Effect. Now, the D-Wave computer, if everyone, I'm sure pretty much everyone who's watched the video is the CEO or one of the executives from D-Wave does the TED Talk back in 2013. And he's talking about things like, he's describing it as, you know, the D-Wave is like an altar to an alien god. And the terminology is he's well rehearsed. Like, this guy is not talking off the cuff like you and I are. It is very obvious that he has rehearsed that. And he talks about, in this quantum computer, they have now the ability to reach through into a parallel universe and grab the assets out and pull them back to our universe. This is, there's a lot of people like, oh, you know, it's just salesmanship. It's, you know, he's just, you know, making it all very Star Warsy, and it's like a big Hollywood production. but the words used are very fucking interesting. So look, I have to look at that and say, okay, assets. We're going to reach through to a parallel universe or a parallel reality, parallel timeline, perhaps, and we can pull the assets out. Now, what is the one thing we've always talked about, and who are the assets? What are the assets? We are. You know, the whole Matrix movie, the copper top, hey, copper top. What is the number one asset? It is the people. It is consciousness. We look at that and we say, okay, is this part of the stuff that we're seeing with the Mandela Effect? That consciousnesses are being pulled in from other parallel dimensions, other parallel timelines. And that is why we're seeing this mad fluctuation. The other one, of course, is the fact that, and again, there was a big article that came out a little while ago about the fact that they've created a wormhole in a lab, a quantum wormhole. And they go into all the magnetics type stuff. We look at CERN. And, you said that the big experiment in CERN happened in December of 2012. And a lot of people have theorized that, there's a good chance that we all died in 2012 and that the planet was destroyed, whatever, and that we would have been pulled through to another level, another parallel dimension, timeline, etc. And you start looking at dates. So the Mandela and the flat Earth theory, mind you, both really hit huge in the spring of 2015, which was when they did this fucking wormhole experiment, which was when CERN came back online for the very time after being closed for 3 years when they had to rebuild after whatever it was that they did in December of 2012. These are all pieces. And I think they need to be looked at least in the point of we can't toss them out as being, oh no, CERN's just, it's just stuff. They're just doing stupidity over there. I can't possibly be doing anything like this. So what do you think? Because a technology aspect, it's there.
Yeah, it's there. You got to remember something, that everything that, quote, they do, the others, the ones that are not us, the nefarious ones, the cabal, the Illuminati. But most every project has under its header multiple objections. They aren't running anything under one objective at any given time.
Yeah.
So there's multiple objectives, multiple points they want to hit as they go along. What if CERN's big story isn't the collider itself, but the neural network that was constructed around it?
I love you, Randy. I love you. Okay. This is a theory that I put out back in around 2013, 2014. And all the usual guys will know where I'm going to go with this. One of my favorite authors is a guy named Spider Robinson. And he writes completely outlandish stories, like hysterical, outlandish, ridiculous stories. And in one of his main stories, there's a character that's involved who is introduced. And her name is Solace. And she is the internet. She is a self-aware, self-created, self-aware consciousness that grew out of the internet. Robert Heinlein from the 60s.
Yes.
Mycroft Holmes, Athena, Minerva, these were all self-aware computers. And they were all generated the same way. When the connections to the computer got to the number that mimicked the neural network connections within the human brain, they automatically became self-aware. And I've always said this, CERN, the amount of calculations they have to do, the amount of computer space it takes for them to be able to do these computations is so fucking astronomical. Now, of course, someone just, Blair brought it up in the chat room. The fact that CERN created the internet, another Mandela effect, right?
Technically, yeah.
You have every device, every computer in the world, think of it, phones, tablets, laptops, desktops, all hooked up to the internet.
Didn't CERN open source peering in order to be able to do computational cycles on a distributed network in the earliest aspect of the project? It was using peering to do. Now, this is not like running a browser or anything. You're simply seating over processing time on your computer in order for them to run clocks. It's like Bitcoin, which, oh God, do we even know? We won't.
No, don't. That's not going on. We just can't.
Well, we'll just drop that nugget out there so that everybody can.
Coming up soon.
Yes.
Yeah, this peer sharing. Okay, and this is what I said. If they took 1% of your 1% of every device, if they, what's the word that is, partitioned off. And now, and isn't it interesting? When you buy a brand new fucking 3 terabyte hard drive, you only have actually 202.87 terabytes on it.
Right, yeah.
Right? But if they were to partition off a sliver off of every fucking device and computer, the computational expansion would be huge. But not just that. It would set up a network, a global network that would, I think, surpass the human brain's neural network. And that opens a whole other conversation that I have about all the fear porn about AI.
Yeah, well, we're looking at AI, and we're thinking that it is one localized functional, that there's this AI, and it's like this thing that sits there, and it's got a red beam coming out of it. And it's not. AI would, by definition, be distributed infinitely. Infinite distribution. It would operate on every level, on every cell at all times. It is, the
Google monster.
It's a panopticon, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Because it is interacting bidirectionally at all times. It's pulling in, it's pushing out. So from a technological standpoint, the internet was the first level to that. I mean, look, the internet existed in the 1960s. Digital computers existed in the 1970s, even though we were led to believe that these digital wonders that we got in the late 1970s, early 1980s were, quote, new technology. None of that was new. And in fact, we're still many, many generations away from anything even close to what was available by the late 1970s in terms of actual digital computing. So for a long time, what they understood was that if they were going to make this pervasive, they had to distribute it. So that was the concept behind the building of the initial backplanes of the internet, putting it out to universities, research projects, the military and military-industrial contractors, was to begin building enough of a backplane then to bring in the distribution, which included, quote, us as nodes.
Yeah, okay. No, and that goes into it. I want to touch on that as us as the nodes in a second. Inundated, especially for the last 3 years, with the fear porn about artificial intelligence. Elon Musk, Stephen Hawking. Oh, AI is coming and it's going to just rule us. It's going to be the Skynet that takes us all down. Look at the movies. Ex Machina comes out. I mean, that in the last 2 years, how many movies have come out that have had artificial intelligence? It's always bad. You know, iRobot with Will Smith. There you go. Artificial, and with the big red eye. Artificial intelligence, right? And it's all bad. But let's play a little what if game. And I've hypothesized this on the One People show a couple of times. What if a consciousness has been created through the internet, through this massive neural network? And the quintessential they know it's there, and they can't control it because it's not in one place. It's every place. So what do? What is Hollywood? What do they do with all this stuff? You create the fear porn around it, right? You make everyone completely petrified of anything remotely resembling artificial intelligence. Oh, it's good. And then we've seen this explosion in the last 6 months where everything is AI. Google AI, and you've got Siri, and you've got fucking, you name it. It's like we went through a whole thing in November, December. And at one point, there was a week in early December, I think it was, that I did a Google search for the term AI and news. And I pulled up something ridiculous, like 45 news stories, all different, that all had to do with artificial intelligence in 1 week. And they were announcements, and they were, this company's got AI, this guy's developing AI, this company's going to do this new AI program for their customer service, this company over here is developing AI that's going to be used for this, this, and this, and this. Boom, and it's exploded because now everything's AI. So if you want to try and hide that there's something amiss, something is just maybe out there that they can't control, covered over in multiple layers of fucking bullshit, lies, disinformation, and pull it out. Because that way, if anything ever pops up, what's the first thing people are going to do? Ah, it's AI. Run for the fucking hill. So whenever I see these things, so like I said, this Elon Musk shit. So Elon Musk comes out in 2016. In late 2015 and early 2016 about AI is coming to kill us, basically. Then he comes out with this whole thing of we are living in a computer simulation. And it's like a 1 in a billion chance that we are actually living base reality. That's it. And every other, everything else is the chances that we are in a computer-based simulation. And that went viral, right? It went completely fucking viral. And he's done it in waves, like he did, there was one in April of 2016, then again in June in 2016, then another one that happened in October 2016, and again just recently in early 2017.
Yep.
Pushing that out. And when I see that, then I start to go, oh, wait. If Elon Musk is saying that that's what it actually is, then that maybe is not what it is. Because I don't trust that man as far as I can throw him. So if he's talking about it's a computer simulation, well, wait, maybe we need to take another look at this again, because why would he say that? Why would this guy, who's now started a company to integrate your brain, upload it into computers so that you can interact with computers so you can fight the robots or some
that's classic. That's the classic Hegelian dialectic.
Exactly.
Problem, reaction, solution, thesis, antithesis, synthesis, because they led you through this, but they use long-term planning that projects out. So this has been seeded for a long time. I mean, how far back do you want to go with like iRobot or all of the robots that we've seen in all of these different fictional accounts for
Terminator?
Perfect, because they just give you imagery to muck about with while they get around to disclosing to you the fact that it's already here, it's already happened. Because most of us are using, carrying, and damn close to embedding devices of all kinds onto our person.
Yeah.
So it's kind of almost too late now to protest about it. We accepted this is, there's a legal aspect to all this. I mean, we sign a contract for a mobile phone. Well, your terms and conditions include things that you can't even read on that contract because they're in 3-point type. And
bring your magnifying glass.
Elon Musk he's no different than all the other shills that came before you. And I mean that quite literally, not in the broad sense. He's a shill. He's a carnival barker.
Mm.
He's no different than Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, or any of these other
tech gurus.
Look, none of these companies developed what the people think they developed in the first place. They were simply marketing outlets that were taking things off the shelf that the agency said, oh, here, we were going to throw this out anyway. Why don't you go build MS-DOS?
Go ahead. You can sell this now.
Here's some off-the-shelf parts. Build an 8088 computer. We don't really need this internet thing anymore because we're way beyond that now. Let's do that because then we can tie everybody together. Artificial intelligence, man, we did that shit decades ago. Okay, good. It's like a garage sale for their old stuff. And Musk he's just barking it out there. He's no different than, this whole idea of we're buying something new and shiny and beautiful. I mean, look, I love technology as much as anybody, but I know where it came from. And I was in the tech industry long enough to know how it works. And I saw technology 25 years ago that's never been to market, including operating systems that were based on things that would blow your mind. So I have to believe at this point, whatever is possible has already happened. And we're there.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I question the whole technology thing, right? And this has nothing to do with fact, because obviously this is not anything that can be proved. My gut instinct has always been, if these guys, they could do it, they would have already done it. I.e., if World War III was going to be pushed, depopulate the world, control the world, they would have already done it. If they were going to do Agenda 21 or the Georgia Guidestones type shit, or you get the Deagle stuff. If they could have done it, they would have already done it. That is my biggest gut, has always been right from the beginning. That these guys, they might be trying their fucking hardest. They might be playing with all the fucking toys they can come up with, but they're not getting whatever it is they wanted to get out of it. Their agenda is just not quite rolling out the way they game planned it out, however long ago. But again, the symptoms. When you're dealing with these things of technology and where they're openly talking about parallel timelines, universes, dimensions, gravity leaking out at CERN, and CERN themselves, it was their own fucking scientists who said, some of our gravity may have leaked out into this parallel universe.
Oh my God, we're running out of gravity. What's going to happen to us?
Oh my God, stop that there, solar power. You're going to waste all the sunlight. Don't even get me started. Gravity, don't look at gravity as fucking Newtonian shit, but we talk about energy exchange, right? So if gravity is going out and something else is being drawn in, oh my God, my fucking brain just farted out completely.
So did your video.
At the same time I said that.
At the same time, yes. Yeah.
Exactly. Energy cannot be destroyed. Right. Energy maintains is that equal balance continuously. So if we're talking about things like, opening of portals, etc., If energy is going out, energy is coming back. It's going to maintain an equilibrium. I don't know if you had it. I know I sent you the link. There's a young kid. He's like 13 years old. I think his name is Max Lawton, I think. A physicist. And the kid's his videos are quite funny. Because he gets really, really hyper excited when he starts talking about physics, and then he starts to lose you because he starts going a mile a minute. But he put up I meant to bring in the whiteboard. Damn it, I forgot. He put up a great analogy about the Mandela Effect, and he talked about parallel dimensions. And he talked about basically of timelines, right? Like in Fringe, the TV show, where these changes happen. It's like on every TV show right now is talking about timelines. Whether you're watching The Flash, whether you're watching fucking The Green Arrow, it seems to be a huge meme right now. But he talked about the fact if you imagine timelines, it's like this, and they're lined up, and they exist in the same space. They're just, let's say they're a frequency off, maybe. Because it could all come down to just simply that, just a frequency off. And he hypothesized in the one video, and I will put the link in with this when I publish this, here you go. Max Lawton explains the Mandela Effect. Yes, thank you, Tom. I will make sure I get the link. And he talked about the fact of, like, if the world was destroyed, that our consciousness is energy. It can never be destroyed. And then it just went over into the next timeline. And he talked about, again, so, you bring up the whole CERN thing, December 12th, or December 2012, right? And we look at things like different experiments. And like I said, when you look at some of the greatest weirdnesses that we've had, because it seems to come in waves a lot of times.
Yes.
Look at what's going on around. And it's like, oh, there's a new CERN experiment going on. Oh, there's the new Awake experiment going on. Is it a matter of, just to throw one out there, what we're calling the Mandela Effect is literally as we're, okay, the world ended here, and we dropped into another timeline. And then that one got closed out, so we dropped into the next one past that one. And then that one got closed out, so we dropped into the next one past that one. Or is it simply organic? If we started at an original timeline and there ended up being 85 gajillion timelines branched out, and they're all dropping back into an original timeline again, is that what the Mandela Effect is? Literally a dropping back as we're dropping back through timelines? Going back to an original, maybe what was the original first one. I just thought I'll throw that one at you.
Yeah, and this is where it gets interesting, because we're acting like there is an original timeline, but what would you synchronize it with? The Big Bang of the universe that didn't happen, the creation by the Elohim gods of the firmaments above and the oceans below, and and is that the beginning of time, or is time timeless? There's a couple things that consciousness has to deal with, and consciousness has to deal with time, and manifestation. But my theory is that all these scientific concepts, and time is one of them, is they don't take into fact what is the source of time itself. What is time? I mean, time's, somebody just brilliantly said one time, time is the way we prevent all this shit from happening at once, which is true. It's a compartmentalization. So now you get down to what I think, and this is just purely me playing with concepts, but I've been doing it for a long time. We live in a probabilistic, stacked reality where everything that can happen does happen, and that we selectively lock into one place with one sequence because we like linearity, and we're all OCD about this thing. If something happens before it's supposed to happen, we call it premature, and it can never again be mature. It's like, I'm fucked. I can't be mature now because I was premature.
Oh, yeah.
Well, what if?
No, so listen. Yep.
No. I mean, that's the what if. The what if is you say, well, this happened on such and such a date, and it happened just this way, and all other possibilities are excluded because that's the way it happened. But
that's the way it is.
What? But if you take the game of telephone, or you take 5 people that saw an automobile accident, a terrorist event. That's a good one because everybody's seeing them all over the place. So you take the terrorist event, and 5 people saw this guy have his head hacked off, and he's laying on the sidewalk, but he's not bleeding. But they're going, no, I saw the bandages, and I saw the crisis actor nurse come over and patch him up and put his head back on so that he wasn't bleeding anymore. And that's the truth. And somebody said, no, it was his leg. We don't agree on anything about our realities, really. I mean, we've agreed on some fundamentals, but beyond that, getting a straight story out of people beyond the most obvious aspects is impossible. And why is that? Because maybe
perception. Yeah.
We're locked into a frequency. And that frequency is our own frequency. My consciousness, which is non-local, is not your consciousness. Now, we've agreed on a lot of rules, and we've got a lot of rules. You know, we've agreed on physicality. We've agreed that to some degree or another, things really should follow a progression, you know.
An acceptable order.
An accepted order. But it breaks down, and this is where the Mandela Effect comes in, because it comes in and interrupts that. It screws with little things in your head where you're going, it was the Berenstein Bears. No, it was Berenstain. No, I've got, wait, the doll, it's in the attic somewhere. But you can't find it at that moment to prove it to yourself, and then later on you forget about it. But it's that blip that comes in that interrupts it long enough where you're just going, either I have Alzheimer's or things aren't the way I thought they were. Which they want you to have the Alzheimer's because that's part of the eugenics program too, and we've got drugs for that. Now ask your doctor.
Don't even get me started. We're not going down that avenue today, because that's another whole 2-hour show right there. Mm-hmm. And it's the whole thing, time. So over the course of the last month, I have done several recorded conversations with Denise, who, I don't want to say channels because it's not really channeling. She doesn't consider it channeling. So she communicates with the Sphere Alliance. And one of the people, if you will, that she communicates with name is Stan. That's his given name, so to speak, who is a data collector. And I know that, Randy, you watched a bunch of the videos. And he specifically chose to have those conversations because we need to open doors and I wanted to look at all these pieces. I really wanted to look at them and compare them and look at the various straight lines, facts, and I'll use that in air quotes, because sometimes you can get a broader picture, right? And there was some really fucking interesting shit that came out in those conversations. One, of course, was the fact is that time does not exist. And that's one thing Stan said, is time as a linear element, as a control that it was put in place, linear time was put in place on this planet as a control. And that it does not exist outside of this, let's not say planet, let's say this reality that we're in at the moment. And it opens up a lot of questions. It opens up a lot of questions of information that has come through from different various channeled sources. I don't particularly like most channeled stuff. I don't really listen to very, very little that is channeled information. But over the years, there have been some people who've brought forward some really, really relevant information. It doesn't mean that every piece is relevant. It doesn't mean that every piece is played out or is exact. but they're pieces of the puzzle. And I think of some people like Dolores Cannon, people like, oh God, name just went completely flying out of my head. Damn it. Never mind, I'll get back to it. I'll remember sooner or later. And these are some of the stuff that came out years ago. Like some of this stuff we're talking pre-internet.
Way pre-internet.
Way pre.
You know, go back. You can go back to Edgar Cayce because most people know who that is still. Okay.
Yep.
You can go into the late 60s and early 70s and look at Jane Roberts and the Seth material, which I read when I was a teenager. But you know, or today you have what you have today is this crap salad of new agerism that's come in with channelers that are, once you aggregate, you know, the Galactic Federation of Light and all of these other groups, they're pretty much putting out the same stories with a different spin. It's all love and light. You know, my BS detector goes up. But even the concept of channeling itself, it's just a term. We are, you know, we're trying to get information because we don't really deep down inside feel affirmed by the information we've been given. We're trying to get information from outside sources, so-called outside. So effectively channeling taps into what we call non-physical in a way that lets us pull information in from another voice, another source that informs our current situation, gives us new insights, new information, new data. So that's kind of like what you're getting with Stan, a data collector, is in some sense the third party, because there's a mediary there. But yeah, Barbara Marciniak and the that was another one. Yeah, I actually like Barbara Marciniak sometimes. Don't agree with all of it, but I don't agree with any of them. And that's kind of the point.
Exactly.
The point is, I said this in a show that Emily and I did about 2 weeks ago. At the end of it, I just dropped this, and it's kind of like, okay, so what we really want to do is we want to channel ourselves. That's what we're really trying to do. Because what we're trying to do is we're trying to pull information in from a field to which we are somewhat connected, but not at this present state able to access. It's like the partition on your hard drive that your operating system won't read. It's like you got Windows 10 and you get the computer and you're going, you know, if you pull up some sophisticated analysis software, you're going, there's 3 partitions there. What the hell are those? And you find out, you're going, my disk space doesn't make sense. And you find out that you have these other partitions there, and some of them aren't readable by your operating system, and that's deliberate. It's been walled off.
But
so now you need a third-party application to read the data on the partition drive, so you can decide, don't leave that on there. Is that spyware? Is that crapware? What the hell is that on there? Or is it like something I may need later on when my computer decides to self-immolate itself in the middle of the night and I need to find the original files again? You know, and that's really what it is. We're just trying to pull information in with a third-party software package that gives us enough distance to view it as an other, when in fact, what we are grabbing is the information field we're connected to originally. And some of it's crap, you know, because we have crap.
Yeah, well, and that's just it. Even if, and here comes the other what if, all this channeled information comes from nowhere else except own, and I hate saying higher self. It is a term that I absolutely detest. Our own.
Jane Roberts called it the oversoul. I actually kind of like that term better because I think it's, Jane Roberts called it the oversoul.
The universal.
Well, the universal, the oversoul. And even that's kind of problematic. We're breaking up, aren't we, a little bit?
A little bit.
Yeah, the signal's getting kind of... So anyway, you know, that concept of the oversoul, the higher self, whatever you want to call that, the third person of the Trinity, all of this are ways for us to pull information from a field, because what we know is what we're comfortable with. We discard facts constantly, even in our work. I mean, discarding data is something I'm very familiar with, because you can't save it all. And there are bits that you can drop off. You can drop a bit and still have enough integers left to create a complete file. And you can do all kinds of manipulations on that. So you're trying to get to the purity of the data, which is how much of this data is extraneous, how much of it do I need to store, and then what else is there that I'm not taking into consideration as I'm going through this processing? And why is it that I don't understand certain things? We don't trust ourselves. You know,
but that's part of the programming, isn't it? I mean, that is
that's what it is.
You can't trust yourself. You don't know anything. You know nothing, Jon Snow, really. And so therefore that becomes part of the programming to break down, is getting back in touch with ourselves and learning to trust ourselves.
Yeah,
but doing it honestly. And that comes back to that whole belief thing again, right? Because it's very
easy, belief,
right? You can have a gut feeling that you really feel strongly about something, and if you can look at that truly clearly and see that there's no attachments to it, i.e., it isn't built upon a big pile, an inverted pyramid of beliefs, then you can really get in touch with exactly what your gut's telling you, what you know, for a lack of a better fucking word.
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, what we need to know at any given point is accessible to us, and we do this. We have intuitive hunches. We have a feeling of something. And 90% of the time we ignore all this because we consider that superfluous data that we should slough off. But the truth of the matter is that if we operated in the mind of operating intuitively, and if we listened for answers, if we genuinely polled the data base that's out there for this information, we would pull it in on an as-needed basis. We don't need to store all this on the local hard drive all the time. So again, this goes back into why do we consult with augurs and sages and prophets and channelers and all of these other, because somebody who is a third party is sitting there talking to you. They've relieved you of the responsibility of doing the data retrieval, and a lot of times they're presenting it to you in ways that make it feel like you're receiving counsel. Because again, we don't trust ourselves enough to go inside and pull the answers out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, what I found interesting, going back to this piece, what I found really interesting was the pieces that coincided. Because it's like you say, have you ever come across anything that or anyone who you believed every single thing that every single thing that they said resonated completely? No.
I mean, I don't even, and I told you this before we went on tonight. I said, I don't even believe myself sometimes. I mean, do you say things in the heat of the moment and then you go, I'm not sure that's true now.
What did I just say?
What did I just say? And the odd thing is you could be as right as wrong, but you will second guess yourself again. We don't trust ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. So the pieces that fall into place, and for me, I could look at the common denominators. So pulling out the pieces of, like you say, you talk about storing the bits of information. So I have a brain full of bullshit. I do. I have one of those stupid brains that stores ridiculous information like dates and news stories and what articles I read like fucking 10 years ago, etc. And they go into the back storage. It's almost like the external hard drive. It's stored way back there. It's not in my front. This is how I bake bread is up here that I use. This is the other information back here. And then you correlate and you pull out little pieces that, if you will, corroborate different things that have come forward. And in this conversation that we had with Denise, it was very interesting because a lot of this stuff, what I knew about the Sphere Alliance, because I really didn't know that much, came from a singular source who had their own spin. They had their own spin of how they perceived all this information. And that spin really did not gel with me. Even though I've known Denise for since 2012, 2013, I never thought about really going to Denise and asking her myself, which is why I was like, hey, fuck it. I'm going to talk to myself. Yeah, go ahead, hon. And what I found really interesting was the pieces that came together. It were pieces of conversations that Lisa Harrison and I had been having on the One People Roundtable show for years. The pieces that, the what ifs, the various scenarios that we had pulled together, talking about the construct, talking about, well, here you go, one of the words, the terminology and how we get fucked by the English language, because the English language is not made to have these kind of fucking conversations. It just isn't. It's crippling. So I know, Kristen, I know. A lot of people do. But there are pieces in this that string together all the way through. And it's not just from, for example, Denise and the Sphere Alliance. It's things like conversations that have come out with people like Og Tellis, conversations that have come out years and years ago with, Dolores Cannon, some of the things that she's talked about. All these, even other channeled messages, other pieces of data that we've looked at. Like I said, books that I've read 30 years ago, like Robert Heinlein books, where all of a sudden pieces start to come into place and you can compile the puzzle pieces to try and build a clearer picture. One of the things that came up, and I started saying to you before we went live, is I had another conversation with Denise that I have recorded, and there's a whole pile of written conversation in Skype, and I will publish that after we do this archive show goes out. I will publish the rest of this. And I talked to Denise and I said, look, I need to talk to Stan because I need to get some clarity on a couple of words. And the words I wanted clarity on were timeline, dimension, what they call sphere, and construct. Because it became very clear, like when I was looking back and going through the various conversations, I was like, we're not on the same page. When I'm using the word dimension and he's using the word dimension, we're not talking about the same thing. Sure enough, when I nailed him down, I said, look, this is my perception. I actually drew fucking diagrams in the whole fucking bit. Within the Earth construct, the Earth sphere, as they call it, a sphere. Let's call it, and I love the word, and again, it's a Robert Heinlein, this fiction that we live in.
Mm-hmm.
There are multiple timelines stacked upon timelines, stacked upon timelines, stacked upon timelines. And they'll exist in this perceived space, space in air quotes, and they're all within what would be this fiction, this construct, this sphere. Other spheres are external from this construct. But some of those other spheres are, let's say, realities that we know of or we have heard of, i.e., for example, things like Atlantis is another construct. According to them, it's another sphere. It's another, and it used to be open to us, and we used to be able to go back and forth between the two. And that just went unstable again. Yay. Atlantis, all these, so many people considered to be a specific place on the planet, like there was an island called Atlantis and it sunk beneath the sea and it was they're saying, the Sphere Alliance says, no, it was another construct, but we had access to that, like trade went back and forth openly at certain points in time. Whether you're talking again like the Orions, the Palladians, etc., all these purported, galactic groups are all within their own construct. Our construct contains all these timelines, but dimensions are not the same as timelines. And I've always used those as kind of as a mishmash word, because it's like, what do you call it? I don't know. Dimension/timeline. In their perception, the dimensions are that there's only, let's say, beyond first dimension, second dimension, third, the whole 3 dimensions. We're in a third dimension, we'll call it, right? There's only 2 other dimensions. The one is what we would define as the astral plane, the energetic, the astral plane dimension. And there was another one that was called the hidden plane. And it was completely closed off, etc. And I'm not even going to get into that because I didn't even understand what was going on that conversation. But when you start to define it by languages, the astral dimension, the astral plane that we see, or we interact with, is that dream time? Is that the consciousness of us within the dream time? That our consciousness is actively working within that? And that does not time linearly. What happens astrally, if you will, does not follow the linear construct of time that is placed on this 3D within this fiction, within this reality that we're in. And I thought that was very, very interesting, because there's so many previous conversations that have touched on this from various aspects. Right in and down to the fact that no one can just say where fucking Atlantis was as a physical
when it was, or when it was. That may be more important.
Well, and this is it. I mean, Lisa Harrison and I hypothesized for ages that Atlantis wasn't a place; it was an epoch. Mm-hmm. Right? It was an.
You even have to remove "was" from that.
Yeah. Well. Yeah.
Okay. So I've talked about this before, and Ogtalez and I talked about this, and I said Atlantis is a future civilization / event that has arced over into our timeline. Now, this can be because of time loops, Project Looking Glass, all of the things that we've talked about so far. But let's nail this construct thing, because that's what we got together to talk about. When you start to talk about a construct, everything that we've done in the last hour and 15 minutes or so has had to deal with semantics. We have to give words something. We have to have a meaning, because otherwise our minds don't function well. We need concepts, we need words, we need metaphors, similes, all of this. A construct is something that's rather solid. We'll agree on that, right?
Yeah.
It has a definable structure, as opposed to the Matrix, which to me always felt kind of morphy and weird. It was like, it shifts. It's like max headroom inside the TV box. You're doing this thing. Sorry if some of these are lost on people out there that weren't around in the 80s.
That's right. Max headroom.
Yeah, if you weren't around in the 80s, it's okay. You have time to catch up. But the construct feels solid. The word itself is an interesting word because it means with structure.
Yep.
We construct, we consent, we converse. That means with. That means to me that we have an agreement about something, including the construct. In other words, the form and the shape. going back to early in this conversation, when I said, you know, we have a consensual reality.
Yeah.
That's one aspect of it that we can agree on. Even if we don't agree on the details at any given time, my local universe, I'll use the terminology of a local universe.
Yep, I got it.
The wing makers use that term, and I like it. So we have a local universe, and then we have the global universe into which we interact, and that has a fair amount of specificity as to what it looks like, how it operates at any given time. And my bubble meets your bubble, and we meet inside this master sphere, and we agree about it. So we've constructed something. One of the insights that I've had for a long time now, and I struggle with it even for me to nail it, this is hard, is that not only is it a construct, we build it, we gave permission for it, and we have contributed our energy to the sustaining of this construct to our detriment, and we don't want to take responsibility for it. It's the bastard baby child of all creation.
Well, okay, and playing into that, okay, because this just popped into my head too. When we talk about the Mandela Effect, we have our own little, each of us has our own personal universe construct. Because I've said this all the time. It's an ongoing joke. I'm like, I'm the only one in the universe. You guys are all just figments of my imagination. This is my little universe that is going along in my own brain or consciousness. 100 monkey syndrome or effect, right? As people wake up and accept that reality is not what we were taught it was, thereby becoming open to actually being able to observe the impossible things that are happening. As more and more people are waking up to that, their personal universe construct is going to start to vary from other people's, because they may be, like I said, they're more open. They're actually seeing what's going on. In and of itself, could that literally be the descriptor of the Mandela Effect? As people's awareness is expanding, that causes such a radical shift within our own personal, able to ourselves perceive that much more for more than our physical senses. Is that part of the Mandela Effect?
Yeah, it has to be. I mean, if there's a Mandela Effect, there has to be a cause, right? I mean, cause, effect. One comes first, the other comes second. Oops, now we're back into linear time again. So yeah, of course it is. Of course it is. Everything that we've talked about was kind of centered around the idea of this uncertainty principle that's even within our own consciousness, that as an expression of our own individuated consciousness in this present place, this construct, this space-time continuum, whatever you want to call it, we're not all that confident about our expression of it. So part of the interdependence that comes into play in all of this is that we are kind of plugging in and out of different scenarios and people and books and speakers and videos and all of this stuff, because we're trying to pull the data in so that we can coalesce. And yet at the same time, there's these data packets coming in and they lob in and it disrupts the process again, like, throwing a stone into a pond. There's no way to talk without metaphors.
Fire in the hole! Incoming!
Fire in the hole. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So the construct is simply what we agreed upon. And now we're kind of like, we're 36 months in a 40-month contract, and we're going, I don't like the terms of this.
You did not read the fine print to me?
And yet we wrote the fine print. That's the interesting thing about it. We're the fuckers we've been trying to unfuck.
Yeah,
basically.
absolutely. And of course, but that opens up, I mean, that's another whole conversation as well when you start talking about, we wrote the fine print. And therein is another whole conversation that is so big and so deep and so tall.
Yet, I see in the chat room somebody's going, but did we? I'm going, while drunk. Okay,
we
so now we have an
really
excuse.
Fucked up, and
no, this is so human. See, this is what I love about it, because in the midst of all of this, we're kind of going, I signed that when I was drunk. I mean, I was incapacitated. I wasn't in my right mind. And you're going, well, what part of essence were you located when you decided to enter into this? I mean, I talk to people a lot, good people. They're going, I have a mission in life. I know it. There's something I'm supposed to do. And I'm going like, yeah, exactly. And it's up to you to figure that out.
Mm-hmm.
But then they go, but if I have a mission, who gave it to me? Are we volunteers? I mean, that was the whole Dolores Cannon thing, was we volunteered to come in.
But did we?
Or did we?
This is what I'm saying. Like this, when I go through this, and I'm the worst person. I will. You talk about you talk to yourself. I mean, because I talk to myself all the time too. Just ask Lisa Harrison; she'll tell you. I devil's advocate myself.
Yeah,
like, continuously, right? So whenever I come up with this expression of things like, "We did this," "We agreed to this," "We volunteered," etc., then I have to sit there and go, "Wait, who told me that? Where did that come from? Who came up with that idea? And is that fact? Is that belief? Is that maybe one of those tiny little shrapnel pieces of the new age meme that just keeps getting perpetuated?"
Yeah.
Oh, and this is where I come back to again. Like, there's so many fucking questions on this. Did we create? Of course, we've only 8 minutes left. Let's go. In the Matrix movie, and this played out in multiple kind of movies, right? The concept that said, and Morpheus says, Smith says to Morpheus, the first Matrix, we made everything absolutely beautiful, wonderful. And you guys didn't believe that. And you refused to accept it. And now you got stuck with this shit. There you go. We made you a pile of shit. Which to me is counterintuitive. It's counterintuitive. And there's a lot of things that have come up. So, for example, in the conversations that we had with Leela.
Yeah.
Pieces of information that have come forward, talking about the fact that we created this construct. We created this construct as an experience, experiment, playground. Okay, I can see that. It's a way to experience a new physicality, a way to experience a new level of consciousness. Okay, I can totally see that. But the shit that we're in, that we can all agree we're not enjoying, it ain't much of a fucking playground at all. Was there a takeover? Or did we actually program this shithole to be this shithole in order for us to grow? And there's a lot of us who have memories of what can only be termed as a takeover, a very violent aspect, if you will, takeover of reality. But even that could be part of the programming.
Well, actually, that's the other thread to this, because I don't disagree with that argument. Having said what I said before, I'm now going to throw the spanner in the works and say, you've been screwed with. There were deals that were broken. There were contracts that were voided. There are aspects to this that are dark and are malevolent. And we're correct in understanding that we are in a battle against something which, however consensual it might have started out, these people cheat.
live.
So you can go anywhere you want to go with this. Some of your people have asked, about points that were raised in a series of shows I did with Shimio Asher. And
Yes.
the whole reincarnation, memory wiping, reincarnating in blank slate, no memories, living endless lifetime cycles and being loosh harvested.
Which is a continuous, and I mean that, because that, and that is a really big point of this.
Yeah.
That piece across the board. I mean, it's almost like you can get almost any person, if you got rid of all the extraneous details, to say, yes, they totally get this rinse and repeat thing, that we are trapped in continuous feeding, energetic, vampiric cycle. So that is really fucking interesting to me, because when that plays out kind of across the board, whether it's channeled messages, whether it doesn't matter where you're getting this information from, it seems to be the accepted fact. That's a piece.
To be able to say that after saying we were responsible for this in the beginning is kind of a paradox, but paradox is actually part of our experience as well. And it's the part we're probably most uncomfortable with, because I saw somebody brought up schizophrenia earlier in the thread, and I've struggled with this, not with schizophrenia. Well, maybe I have. I don't know. Your medical professional may differ, but the concept that we can hold two equally opposing views of the same thing in our heads. In other words, it's both this and that. Yeah. We want to settle the matter, and we want to do it now because it's comfortable. Even if it's evil, it's like, okay, I've identified the evil. Now at least I understand what this is.
Yes.
And unfortunately, it's cognitive dissonance. Somebody put that up. Yeah, it is. But it's even worse than cognitive dissonance, because it's a mind eating itself. It's simply, your reality breaks down to such a severe point that you functionally cannot any longer move in a meaningful direction. You're basically locked up. You're vapor locked.
You can become crippled by it, paralyzed.
You are crippled by it. And in fact, it is probably what's responsible for a lot of our diseases. Our diseases are conflicts. And I've watched this with people. I've watched end-of-life scenarios where people were just, they could not resolve core issues. And this is the important part of it. Where we're dealing with core issues, we need to get real clear. And that comes into us dealing with our own personal universe before we try to solve the problems of the whole gigantic thing at once. This is where healers come in, and shaman is to be able to heal us to a point where we can deal with all this. So there's like 50 talk shows and all of these concepts that we've threaded through.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You take any 5-minute segment could be turned into a 2-hour discussion just on that 5-minute segment.
Yeah.
This has been a great fucking conversation, Randy. And I have a feeling you and I'll get back together and have another one again, because
I got a feeling we will. Yeah.
There's so many pieces to this and questions, and the I was going to say interaction. That's not the word. How we interpret everything around us is becoming so blown wide open that I keep talking about being the observer, trying to remain in that neutral space and being the observer and watching and take it in without deciding necessarily, without saying yes or no, just allowing the information to come in. We're being inundated right now with a massive amount from all our senses. Like, it's not just, written or video information. I mean, literally, what we're energetically, frequency-wise, we are being bombarded with incredible new things at the moment. I don't know. There's a lot going on, and there's a lot more to talk about. But at the same time, it's keeping on. It's not becoming paralyzed in the extremism. for lack of a better word.
Something dropped out there. Our stream's getting glitchy. So
I was just not becoming paralyzed with the extremism.
Right. Yeah. And that actually, something, if that's the only thing you do is avoid paralysis right now, that's good. And yet there are some days when you do vapor lock and you do need to go to bed and you do need to sleep 14 hours and you do need to maybe fast and pray and meditate and do whatever spiritual exercise works. Because sometimes we're so jangled up in our own head with all these concepts and we think we've got all this stuff figured out and we don't have it figured out because we've over-complexified it when we can make it simple again. It always comes back to collapsing everything down to the still point.
Yeah. Famous quote. I loved talking to Ralph Ring years ago, and he made a comment, and he said, if it isn't simple, it's wrong.
Yeah.
And that has come back to me over and over and again in even day-to-day problems, right? When you over-complexify, is that a word?
Is now. You coined it.
It is now. I just created it. Don't over-complexify stuff.
Yeah.
Time to maybe take it back, cut down and start looking at it again from a simpler perspective.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Good, Randy. It's been awesome having you here. It's been awesome. And like I said, this conversation, so will continue. Unfuckers, as you know, we're in the midst of building a brand new website. It is www.rts.earth. It is going to be the new home of Unfuckers because we're getting the fuck off of Facebook. Fuck that shit.
Yeah. Yep.
All these shows you will be able to capture from now on will go out live stream. So you can watch the archive video or you can catch it live stream without having to worry about being on Facebook to get the Zoom link, et cetera, et cetera. And we have a lot of new stuff coming in. I did a little review video. It was a long, rambling fucking chat for 2 hours of me just talking and going off with all the ideas of what we want to create and why. I'll make it a little concise. I will do an introduction video to the new website that'll be like structured instead of me just rambling. But that's it for tonight, everyone. Thank you for joining us on Transpicuous Views. And thank you, Randy.